Here is how BYU pulls it off.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. I have a team in my best bets later in this show that you will not believe. They have never been mentioned before, and I'm going for it. I've got all my big game picks, but first let's talk about the game of the week. Can we get clarity? I want to issue an informal poll down in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at LockedOn_CFB. BYU is ranked ahead of Texas Tech in the playoff rankings because they're undefeated. Texas Tech is not. That's how that should work, generally speaking. Texas Tech, according to our friends at FanDuel, is favored by 10.5 points. If BYU wins, is this an upset? I've had this debate several times this year. I'm not really sure if I should be starting my show saying, here's how BYU pulls the upset, or if it's just, here's how BYU wins the game of the week that I cannot wait to watch and react to on Saturday night. Anyway, so help me out with that while I give you the roadmap for how BYU does, in fact, win the football game. What the Cougars have done exceptionally well over the last couple of years, as they have won close games, as they have won as underdogs against teams that Vegas thinks, nope, you're not as good as this team. They certainly feel that way about Texas Tech. The thing that they have done consistently is their situational football in all three phases has been magnificent. I'm not even talking about their totals for a particular game on third and fourth down. But when the game is close late, my confidence in BYU's ability, no matter which side of the ball is on the field, to come through is sky high. It is sky high. And it's crazy to say that about Bear Bachmeier, who is not in any way, shape, or form getting enough national respect. He is a true freshman that has BYU undefeated, ranked inside the top 10. Who gets more national love, Bear Bachmeier or Bryce Underwood? I'm raising that point as a Bryce Underwood fan. I don't know if there is a National College Football Show host fan that has been as in support of Bryce Underwood as I have. Going back to the spring, I have said Bryce Underwood should start. And he is. And he looks awesome. And when Michigan plays Ohio State in a few weeks, it's going to be quite the moment, quite the opportunity. Bringing this back to the Cougars and the Red Raiders. Bear Bachmeier's ability to just continue to be good over and over and come through and do whatever is required, use his legs, use his arm, use his legs and his arm on a particular play. It's been really impressive. Now, in this game, as I talked about earlier this week, Bear Bachmeier cannot, as good as he is, as well as he's played, he cannot beat Texas Tech on his own. If you go back to that Utah game, he did not win that game on his own. But if given the opportunity by the rest of his team to make a big play in a situational moment, in a pivot point in the game, I trust that he's going to be able to do that, even against this Texas Tech team, which is really good, who I've also been very high on since the spring. So the Texas Tech side of things comes down to two particular aspects. Can you stop BYU from being able to run the football consistently? We'll see if they do wind up getting LJ Martin back this week. And number two, can you disrupt any of those elements where it feels like BYU has things go just perfectly and exactly the way they want, and they come up in these big moments? If you're Texas Tech, can you win those particular moments? Because some folks might look at the spread on this game and Texas Tech is up to 10.5 points. If you think that is free money, and I'm sure plenty of BYU fans do, hey, FanDuel.com is right there. 10.5 points. That's a lot of points. That's a lot of points for a top 10 matchup. Last week, Utah was ranked lower than Cincinnati and won by a lot more than the 8.5 they were favored by going into the game. So sometimes Vegas knows. But BYU has not been a team that Vegas fully understands how to figure out because they just have the it factor. You also have to credit one thing I love about this game. This is a different Big 12 matchup than what huge Big 12 matchups have been in the past. I believe the last time game day was in Lubbock was for that famous game against Texas. Final score was 33, 37, 33. Game was in the 30s, right? I don't think this game's getting there. Both of these defenses, I think, are way too good. Way too good. As much as I like what BYU's done on offense, this is going to be a challenge. Wasn't a high-scoring game against Utah. That was at home. I don't think this will be a high-scoring game for BYU's offense against Texas Tech because that defensive line is not to be messed around with. The pass rush is very real. But if Texas Tech can't take away BYU's ability to run, or if they can't knock off one of the situational components, whether that's winning a big special teams play or getting a big stop on fourth down or converting a fourth down or two in this game, if Texas Tech doesn't do those things, yeah, the Red Raiders could just lose this game outright. They absolutely could. Now, for the moment I'm sure you've all been waiting for all week long, particularly my BYU fans out there. I am taking Texas Tech to win the game. Shock of all shocks. What else would I do? There's nothing else I could in good faith with the relationship that I have with the BYU faithful out there. I couldn't come on here and say literally anything else other than Texas Tech is going to win the game. But watch for those moments. Watch for the, how does BYU extend drives? How does BYU make a play on special teams? How does BYU win the money downs? Those are the things I feel like in these close games, BYU's always been able to come through, and you have to credit the coaching staffs. I talked about how different this will be compared to a traditional, stereotypical, almost Big 12 showdown. I think that this game is going to look and feel like a Big 10 or SEC prize fight. And frankly, there have been plenty of SEC big games this year that have felt like old school Big 12 matchups. This isn't one. These teams are both run, I think, primarily through their defenses, and I'm not casting dispersions or overlooking the Texas Tech offense, but it is that Texas Tech defense that really won them that game at Utah earlier this year. It's the Texas Tech defense that has been better, I think, than just about any unit in all of the Big 12, except for maybe, BYU or Utah. And what a coincidence. Those three teams all in the top 15 this week. So I do think Texas Tech is going to win the game. I don't know, BYU fans. Do you want me to even give a score prediction, or do you want me to just leave it at that? Well, you can't answer in real time, obviously, because I'm recording the show ahead of time and then releasing it at a later point in time. So I'll just go with Vegas. I'll just do it. Texas Tech 28, BYU 17. The narrowest of coverage. But again, the upset potential is there. Texas Tech has to find a way to flip one of those things. I love that there are legitimate conversations about defense in this game. I love that there are legitimate conversations about how great both coaching staffs are in this game. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Could we have upsets brewing in the SEC? Let's find out. First, this episode brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down and really talk about who we might say will have delivered, whatever past, future participle. I don't know. I didn't study English in college. I just speak it well enough to come on here on the show. If BYU is going to win the game against Texas Tech, Bear Bachmeier will have to deliver. If Mississippi State, off their first SEC win under Jeff Lebby, is going to pull it off and beat Georgia, then guess what? Blake Shapen will have to have delivered. And that Georgia defense is not what it used to be. You could see plenty of points in that game. Is that going to be a best bet? You're just going to have to tune in and find out and see if those guys can deliver in my futuristic world, just like DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash today. Could they pull it off? Could I, in good conscience, come on this show and tell you that Mississippi State has no chance to upset Georgia? I don't think there has ever been a team that gets discussed on this show as much as Mississippi State that is going to wind up with maybe 2 conference wins in a season. The value over there at FanDuel has just been incredibly real. So all my best bets later on, and guess what? I actually am not making Mississippi State one of them. The upset potential here is incredibly possible. Mississippi State is at home. They are getting 9.5 points. Last I checked, as I'm recording this particular show, I think that's slightly too many, given that Georgia has really all year kind of followed the same game script over and over. You know who they remind me of? They remind me very heavily of 2023 Washington. Go look at the run the Huskies went on. They were undefeated going into the college football playoff, made it to the national championship game where they, of course, lost to Michigan. But if you look at what they did in the lead up to that Pac-12 title game, do you realize they were almost 10-point underdogs to Oregon in that spot? You know why? Because they kept getting down, and Vegas thought, this dam's going to break. There are cracks in the stone, and water's starting to get through. This could be one of those weeks. I actually don't see it because I don't trust Mississippi State's defense enough against a Georgia offense that I have been impressed with this year. Now, I think Mississippi State can keep it close. I will take Georgia to win 31-24 over the Bulldogs, but Mississippi State to cover, I'm not putting it in my best bets, though. How about, speaking of the SEC, Texas A&M at Missouri? I almost had this one as a best bet, and I probably should. You know what? I might even put it back in. I might have a six bet week. That might be the way that we roll, because Texas A&M is favored by 6.5 going to Missouri this week. Now, here's the good news. Statistically, Missouri's run defense has been stellar. They're holding opponents on the season under 100 rushing yards per game. And here's the downside. Against Texas A&M, it doesn't necessarily matter, because Texas A&M could win any type of football game. They could lean on their run game with their backs. They could have Marcel Reed run around a bunch. They could move the chains with scrambles. He could throw the ball really well. They are explosive through the air. Colin Klein's been dialing up the shots, and Marcel Reed's been hitting them when he needs to. Or this could turn into a slugfest. Bo Perbula not going to play in this game. I'm not trying to throw any sort of shade or disrespect here to Matt Zollers, who I believe is expected to start for Missouri in this spot. Yeah, I think Texas A&M wins that one big. I'm probably going to throw that in my best bets now, just because. Just because I can. So Texas A&M minus 6.5. Yeah, I will take Texas A&M to win. Not a super high scoring game, because I think Missouri's defense is solid and is on the road. 23-10. 23-10. I think Texas A&M gets that one done. Northwestern travels to USC. I think this game will be close for a little, and then USC will pull away. Trojans 38-20 over Northwestern. I think they will cruise on Friday night in Los Angeles. USC controls their own path to get to the college football playoff. Don't forget. Just don't forget that, kids. We have to remember. Absolutely have to. I think Oregon will go to Iowa this week and win 24-13. I like the Ducks over the Hawkeyes. I don't think Iowa's offense, stop me if you've heard this before, I know it's a new era and the points have been there. I don't think against the Oregon defense, Iowa can go up and down the field enough. Weather could make that one crazy. That's the sort of game that if the weather gets wild, Iowa could absolutely pull the upset 10-8 or 10-9, something wild like that. But I think Oregon off a bye, Iowa also off a bye, and it's at in Iowa City at Kinnick Stadium. I think that Oregon will find a way to get that one done. Auburn at Vanderbilt. Oh my goodness. The temptation is real. The temptation is very real. I talked about this game. I talked about the Wake Forest Virginia game. For as much as I discussed 2 games between a ranked team and an unranked team with a spread under a touchdown, shouldn't I pick one of the upsets? Shouldn't that just go in line? I feel like I'd go crazy if somehow one of these squads pulls it off, either Wake Forest or Auburn, and then I look back and go, well, I talked about the very real possibility and then didn't do it. I'm not going to doubt UVA again. I did that once. So you know what? I'm picking the Auburn Tigers. I am picking DJ Durkin as the interim head coach at Auburn, who I'm sure would love to try and get that head coaching job. This would be the moment to do it. I think his team plays inspired football. Vanderbilt plays complete team football. They are not, as Texas showed us last time out, they are not as talented in the trenches on both sides as they need to be. Auburn is. Auburn, like a number of teams like Penn State or UCLA even earlier this year, there are a number of examples, that Florida, LSU, they weren't missing the talent, they were just missing the coaching. Is the coaching going to show up? So I'll take Virginia to win close against Wake Forest, 23-20. I'll take Auburn to upset Vanderbilt and knock the Commodores out of the playoff picture. Auburn finds a way, 21-17. LSU at Bama, Bama rolls. Bama rolls. I thought about this one earlier this week. Bama at home, though. Kalen DeBoer's a guy that wins. And look, sometimes it gets close. Sometimes it gets ugly, and he finds a way to win those one-possession games, kind of like Kalani Sitake at BYU. But I think Bama at home, off a bye in this spot, goes out and just finds a way to throw for a lot more yards than LSU will in this game. New offensive coordinator or not, I can see how it gets crazy. I am not fully there. So give me Alabama over LSU, 27-13, win and cover the 9.5. And the group of 5 games, last but certainly not least. Tulane goes to Memphis. Oof. I thought about this one a lot. I thought about this one a good deal. Playoff implications. Winner will be ranked, I believe, in the playoff rankings next week. They'll be in my top 25. I can guarantee you that right now. Winner of this game will probably knock Tennessee out of the top 25. So I'm going to go with Tulane to bounce back on the road. John Sumrall, big name in coaching circles. His team looked a little distracted last time out against UTSA. I think they find a way to go and beat Memphis in this spot. Look for Jake Retzloff's legs to be a big factor. And I think Tulane wins 31-28 over Memphis. And finally, in the Group of 5 playoff games that I'm talking about this week, playoff implications, I should say, San Diego State at Hawaii, man. Hawaii can score a little. San Diego State can defend a lot. I will make someone prove me wrong. I will not pick against the Aztecs and that defense again. I don't think it's a super high scoring game. 20-10. 20-10. San Diego State goes to Honolulu, gets a win. Those are the big game picks for the week. The best bets are as follows. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. We'll see a lot of game changers tonight in Friday night football games, Memphis and Tulane, USC and Northwestern. On Saturday, game changers all throughout the day. And guess what? Supply House has a game changer, and it's called next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. That is exactly what Supply House brings to the table. Next day delivery. It doesn't get any faster than that. It just doesn't. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. 5 favorites and a pick that you have to hear to believe for my best bets this week. Let me start with UCLA at home against Nebraska. Decently long trip. Dylan Raiola isn't there. Matt Rule got locked up, so there's no distraction for the Cornhuskers in this spot. But this is a sub 2.5 point spread, basically a pick'em. UCLA playing at home. Guess what? I know Indiana showed us that UCLA is not a top-tier team in the Big Ten, but still, since Tim Skipper has taken over as the interim head coach, and he should be seen as the leading candidate for the job, there is plenty of urgency on that sideline for that very reason. They're not mailing it in. They're not saying, to heck with all of this. No, he and Jerry Neuheisel, I think pretty clearly, want to be the UCLA coaching staff next year. So they're going to instill that same sort of urgency or find a way that we've seen. Indiana's just that much better, but don't forget that UCLA, post Deshaun Foster's firing, is pretty darn good. Now, Bruins fans will recall, I'm sure, that if UCLA wins out, which is not likely, but technically possible, then I will have to don a Nico jersey paid for with my own money that I earn hosting this show, and I will have to wear it for an entire week. And would I look forward to doing that? Nope. But would I do it? Of course, because I'm a man of my word, like the Joker, but in maybe a less sinister way. UCLA -1.5. Give me them over Nebraska. I do not like Nebraska's defense, even though they played well last week against USC. I just think that when you've got a backup quarterback going on the road, that's something you pick against. So give me UCLA 34-13. I think UCLA rolls Nebraska in this spot. Texas A&M, talked about them earlier. They have been added to the best bets. 6 picks this week. Texas A&M -6.5 in Missouri. Again, I am fading backup quarterbacks. This one's at home. Zollers gets to play in front of the home fans at Columbia with what are technically still playoff hopes on the line. Missouri will lose, and then they'll be out of the playoff picture. But Texas A&M -6.5. I think they cover that. Here's another one, and this is not even the sicko game. There are actually 2 teams I've never mentioned on this show that are making it in my best bets here. So UNLV is traveling to Colorado State. UNLV's offense this year has been prolific. Colorado State has fired their head coach because, who hasn't fired their head coach at this point in the season, frankly? UNLV hasn't because they just hired Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen's offense with Anthony Calandria at quarterback has been really good. Dan Mullen does not have a defense. The UNLV defense is dreadful. They have been torched in every game, it feels like, this year, and it has been their shortcoming. UNLV's a bowl team. This is a great first season for Dan Mullen. Things are going well. They'll probably wind up with 8, maybe even 9 wins at the end of this year. This is a really good start. I thought this marriage would work. It is. Here's the thing. Colorado State offensively has not been the sort of team that can go and take advantage of this UNLV defense. They will score because UNLV is just not playing a high level of defense this year, but I'll swallow the 4.5 on the road and take UNLV to beat the Rams 38-24. They win. They cover on the road. Colorado State has not been playing good football. I don't think there's a lot of life. I don't think there's a lot of juice on that Rams sideline. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, Colorado State. You go for it. You go. So those are the first 3. Again, I've got 5 favorites and just 1 underdog here. Here's my underdog. And again, this is not the sicko team. But I'm putting UConn in the best bets this week. +9.5 at home against Duke. Duke has to go on the road for a second straight week after an emotional roller coaster of a win last week against Clemson in Death Valley, which might need to get renamed if current trends continue. Duke has been prolific on offense. Darian Mensah, after a slow start, has settled in, and the Blue Devils know how to play offense. Curiously enough, and the reason they're somewhat underachieving, but not out of the ACC title picture, this game, of course, doesn't matter for that against UConn, Duke has not been playing very good defense this year, as evidenced by the fact that Clemson, we know what Clemson is this season, a massive disappointment, put up 45 on them a week ago. Duke found a way to win. Darian Mensah can go back and forth, blow for blow all season long. I think it's just slightly too many points. Second straight on the road, emotional letdown spot. Duke has to scrap and fight and claw. UConn, an independent, slowly, quietly, they're going to go to a bowl game. They're solid, respectable, nothing special. But I think their offense has done enough this season to be able to score and cover the 9.5 against Duke. I'll take the Blue Devils 35-28 over UConn. Huskies cover 9.5. Here's another one. And this is probably my favorite bet of the week, even more than UCLA, Nebraska. Houston -1.5 at UCF. The Golden Knights are also having a good first season under Scott Frost relative to their expectations. They have either won big or lost big. There hasn't been a lot of in between for UCF. Houston had done the legwork to get into the top 25 last week, only to have that all come crashing down in a home defeat to West Virginia. Inexplicably bad. There could be a lot of points in this game. The Houston defense just got torched. I think they bounce back. I think they find a way to play a little bit more Willie Fritz football, run the ball, control the clock, be physical, play good defense. They're on the road giving up just 1.5 points. So essentially a pick 'em here. With just my luck, Houston will win 29-28. But I think Houston will win the football game, cover the 1.5. I'll take the Cougars 28-20 over the Golden Knights in Orlando. And here, the moment that you have all truly and honestly been waiting for, because I teased it to begin this very show. I have never uttered the name of one of these teams, who I'm saying is one of my best bets for the week, until this show. I have once mentioned the other in a coaching search. This is some sicko material for the college football diehards out there. All these lines, of course, provided by our friends at FanDuel. I was perusing. I didn't like a lot of the picks this week. I struggled putting a segment of best bets together. But here we are, off of maybe the worst beat of the year for my best bets. The Missouri one against Kansas was pretty bad. Same vibe last week when Cal didn't cover against Virginia. But at home, I'm going with Eastern Michigan -2.5 against Bowling Green. Neither one of these teams are having very good seasons. Neither one of these teams does a lot on offense. I'm just riding with the home side in this one. Eastern Michigan over Bowling Green -2.5. Houston -1.5 at UCF. UConn +9.5 against Duke, my lone underdog of the week. UNLV -4.5 at Colorado State. Texas A&M -6.5 at Missouri, and UCLA -1.5 against Nebraska. Those are my best bets of the week. Trying to get back over 500. We had 2 straight winning weeks, and Cal blew it. I blame Cal completely. They might never show up in the best bets again. I'm kidding. I will certainly go back to them at some point in time. But I thought about Cal. They're 18.5 point dogs at Louisville. That felt too weird, so I stayed away. But I'd lean Cal to cover. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.